Trackblazer's coming out in a few days, and you know what the slogan is. So what should you be doing the first week of Trackblazer since it's so new and there's going to be a lot of learning? It's quite different from the previous two scenarios. There's going to be a lot more items, a lot more thinking, a lot of new shit that you got to figure out. So with that, how should you approach the first week or the first month or so? I would suggest do not build for CM until you're really kind of getting closer to time, because it is a brutal, wet 3,200 meter CM. That's such a tough start to a new scenario. Why? So when you combine learning the new scenario and building for such a brutal CM, and I mean Trackblazer being Trackblazer, well, focusing on aces right away is probably just going to burn you out, and then you're just going to have a really bad time. So I would suggest doing these things first. The first thing I would focus on is team trials. Now everyone's going to be rebuilding their team trials, and you should be trying to get to rank 5 or rank 6, or class 5 or class 6, and it's pretty easy to do. And with the new scenario, yes, the points are going to be higher because people are going to be building better Umas, and building team trial Umas it's a stress-free way to not really focus on, okay, I need to compete with other people, even though you are competing with other people, but you're just trying to get to rank 5 or rank 6, and it's such a great source of currency that you should not avoid it. Now, I would suggest trying to build sprint Umas first, because it's just easy to not have to worry and think about stamina. So you can be a little bit more greedy with your builds. You don't need the perfect deck, and you can just focus on getting some gold skills, building the sprint, and going about your business. And it's a good way just to learn the flow of the new scenario while doing something that actually has a purpose. After that, I would try to build a few long team trial Umas, simply for the fact that, okay, now we can work on building longs for the champions meet and just get a feel of, when do I click on a stamina training versus when do I click on a speed or power or wit, or you get the point. Now this also leads into the point of figuring out what kind of decks you like to run. And that is because there's going to be, I'm going to generalize it and say there's going to be guts decks, and then there's going to be a little bit more typical decks of speed, wit, and maybe power or stam. Now typically there's no wrong choice unless it's a long CM where you're going to need stamina. But figuring out, according to your playstyle, which one you prefer, and definitely based on your deck, which one you can actually do is a good idea. So test them both out and just see which one feels a little bit better for you and your deck and your playstyle. I am going to a little bit more of a classic route because I don't really like guts decks. Even though I don't have any problem with them, I'm sticking to the norm. In addition to that, I would also suggest making some parents. Now, making parents in the new scenario is going to be a little bit different than before because you're running so many races where your parents are going to have much better affinity with their children. Because of that, making parents is going to be pretty important, and you could just get the flow of the game. You could learn the items. So just make some parents to figure out, okay, well, what do the items do and the flow of the races, so you don't have to think so much once you actually start building your Umas. And this is going to be especially important if you're not running somebody that is pretty strong in both mile, medium, and long. Because if you need the sparks to raise them from a E to an A in mile, well, you're going to need some good parents. I mean, the good news is, since it's Mant, you're not going to be doing 5 runs a day probably, so you can always just make one parent and then borrow the other. One of the easiest things that you can do, and this is only going to take one time, is just building out the schedule and the agenda. And that's pretty simple, and you just really want to focus on building the triple crowns and the triple tiaras and yada yada yada. And of course, also adding in the mile races and anything that you feel like is necessary. Now, you don't have to always run those races and stick to that schedule, and things are going to change depending on this and that and rival races. Building that schedule out right away is just going to free up more brain power, so you don't have to think as much on missing a race and getting an item and checking the shop and getting a race, and just make the schedule and you're good to go. I mean, you can make the schedule right now. Nothing's stopping you. You just go do it. Now, most of the time, you're probably going to be having a pretty similar schedule depending on whatever Uma that you're running. But figuring out what kind of Umas you want to run during the next CM is going to be the next important step, because then you can just start to figure out what kind of parents that you need for that Uma. Now, the next CM is a little bit weird, where it's just a very long one, and it's just kind of like another stamina check race. But given that, you can pretty much run whoever you want to run. You just got to figure out who you want to run. So, I mean, you can figure that out too. Now, I mean, you can kind of see the pattern here when nothing is that complicated, even though this next scenario is pretty complicated. It's just kind of really about taking your time and dipping your toes in the cold water before you dive right in. I mean, you should dive right in, but you should dive right in with the mentality that, hey, we're going to figure this out, as opposed to, try to make a perfect Uma right away and then just get burnt out and get angry and then we go type on Reddit and type in the comments and complain about blah, 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 blah. You get the point. Just take it easy. Just enjoy yourself, man. There's no need to be perfect. And most guides out there are going to try to teach you the perfect meta, and you don't need the perfect meta because the global CMs are not filled with perfect meta Umas. So you don't need to be perfect. You can do whatever you want. It's pretty simple.